If it wasn't made obvious enough 7 or 8 weeks ago, it's now been mathematically confirmed that Leicester have been relegated from the Premier League. Or, as our Twitter admin put it, our place in the 25-26 Championship has been confirmed, because apparently the word relegation is too scary. After an absolutely dreadful season where pretty much everything went wrong, the club's going to need to undergo a massive rebuild in the summer. Every level of this club is absolutely shambolic at the moment and is going to need some change. And so I'm going to cover them from right at the very bottom to right to the top. I'm going to go through the players, to the management, to the ownership. But I'd like to throw in an honourable mention. That Twitter admin, get him gone. He cannot read the room for the life of him. This smiles all round picture was posted the day of our relegation. He is not helping. But on to the players. With every relegation, you're going to have thousands of outgoings, and that's no different for Leicester. Players that are definitely leaving, Mads Hermansen and El Canous. They've been by far Leicester's star players this season, the highest performing ones, and from what I've heard, El Canous has a relegation release clause in his contract, which, knowing Jordan Rudkin, is probably about 3 million, so they're definitely gone. Along with them, you'll have the loan players returning back to their clubs, so Buonanotte and Hudson Edouard, who I completely forgot was at the club still, so I won't really miss him. And other key players who are looking more than likely to leave include Fass, Soumare and Ndidi. And then, of course, Jamie Vardy's contract is running out in the summer. At the point that I'm recording this, we don't know whether he's going to get a contract extension. We know he's going to want to continue his career. We just don't know whether that's going to be at Leicester. Now, of course, we don't know for sure who's leaving. Some of these players might be staying. They could all be going. Some other players could be leaving as well, like Okoli and Winks. They kind of depend on the manager, and I'll speak a little bit more about that later. We just don't know enough yet, because as I'm speaking, I think we have 5 games of the season still left to go, so I'm just going off of rumours. But still, these are key players leaving, and they're going to take quite a bit of effort to try and find people to replace them. So who would the Foxes theoretically bring in? Well, my answer to that is I have no fucking clue. Absolutely none whatsoever. Due to the current complete mess of our finances at the moment, we don't know what budget there is to bring in new transfers, and it's very possible that we could actually get a transfer embargo, so we just can't bring anyone in. So I really don't know how to comment on that. What's likely to happen is the club will turn to its youth academy and players currently out on loan to try and fill these gaps. Players currently on loan from Leicester include Hamza Chowdhury, Ben Nelson, Wanya Marshall, Brandon Cover, Chris Popov, Reiki, Brad Young, as well as Will Alves. Some of those players could fill the gaps that are left by leaving players, as well as actually being quite good in the Championship. Ben Nelson could fill in at centre-back for Fass, and Will Alves can cover that attacking midfielder position left by El Canous. And in terms of goalkeeper, with Mads Hermansen probably leaving, Stolarczyk had a small stint of games in the middle of the season where he was really kind of thrown into the deep end, having to play against Man City and Liverpool, but he still did quite well, and I think he would do quite well in the Championship. And it's no surprise that Leicester's transfer business for this season was absolutely woeful.
Guys, I'm going to get
some transfers.
I'm so excited. I'm going to look so good.
But chances are a lot of those players would be very good in the Championship. That point, of course, kind of relies on whether many of those players actually stay. With player contracts, of course, multiple players are going to have to get wage cuts. That just happens with every relegation team. With extensions, you have, of course, Vardy running out of contract, as well as Everson and Ward. Everson and Ward we don't really need to give contract extensions to. In fact, I would actually prefer if we didn't. With Vardy, it's a little bit more complicated. He's on 140k a week, which for the Championship is already quite a lot, especially when you consider Leicester's finances are all over the place at the moment. He might take a pay cut. Whether it will be enough, I don't really know. And especially considering he's kind of past it now, I still think he'll do okay in the Championship. But worth the cost is more the question. The fan base is kind of split on this as to whether they should give him an extension or not. I personally think that we should, though. I think a talisman like him would be good for the dressing room, especially because at the moment every single one of our players is depressed, seemingly. But also because if we lose him, because our director of football hasn't thought a couple months ahead, shock, if we do get a transfer embargo, then we're probably going to have one striker, and that's going to be Patson Daka. Having sold Tom Cannon in January for only a profit of, I think, 500,000, we'd only be left with Daka, so I'd give him a contract extension, personally. You've also got Jeremy Monga, who you could promote from the youth academy. He's made one appearance for Leicester, I think. He might have made a second one, but he's only 15. He's good. He'd be good on that right wing, but that is, of course, relying on the fact whether we keep him. We're not really giving our young players much reason to stick around at the moment, especially because he's attracting quite a lot of attention from other bigger clubs. Also, keep in mind, Abdul Fatawu is returning from injury in just a few months, so hopefully we have him for that season as well. So in terms of players, I think next season we could be okay. It depends on the transfer embargo. It depends on who actually leaves, and of course who's willing to cut their wages. But the players are only as good as the manager makes them. So who would we get in as manager? Well, as of recording, Van Nistelrooy is still in the job. I think they're probably just going to sack him once the season is over. I think there's some dispute over the compensation that he's going to receive, because he wants compensation for being sacked, but the club doesn't want to do that just yet because that will break PSR rules, because what do you know, we've mishandled our finances again. But it's looking likely that he won't be the manager next season, which makes sense because he has not proven himself to be very good in that job. If he does stay, however, and he doesn't resign, that will affect the future of Harry Winks. Harry Winks and Van Nistelrooy fell out a couple of weeks ago, and Harry Winks has barely played since. Looking likely that Harry Winks will probably be sold if Van Nistelrooy stays on, so that's another player that we could be losing. And who knows, Van Nistelrooy could be good if you give him some decent players in a okay league, but I think at this stage he's already unforgivable at this point with a lot of the fan base, so I wouldn't keep him on personally. So who would replace him? Well, the current shortlist is either Lee Carsley, Danny Roll, Russell Martin, or Sean Dyche, whose name has also been brought up, so not many names screaming ambition. Lee Carsley you'll know from having a brief stint as the interim manager for England a couple months ago. Whether you necessarily want to try him as a club manager at a time where the club's already pretty deflated and in a difficult position, I don't really know whether that's the wisest decision to go with. Russell Martin, of course, was the manager of Southampton, did an absolutely dreadful job, but apparently Leicester is still willing to give him a chance because he's the cheapest option, so that's probably going to be the one we're eventually going to go with. And then Danny Roll would be actually a very interesting one to see. He's done quite a good job with Sheffield Wednesday. It's not like they're particularly, pushing the playoff spots, but in terms of building up a team that can compete when they really were in a difficult position, like us, he's done quite a decent job. And he's also quite young. He's 35, so he'd actually be younger than Vardy if Vardy were to stay on at the club, which would be quite interesting to see. I wouldn't mind that decision, but I think we would have to pay a compensation to take him, so probably not going to. He's also in quite high demand. And then Sean Dyche's name has kind of been thrown in there. I don't know whether there's any legitimacy to that one. He's quite a good manager. I get that his recent stint with Everton might not suggest that, but he did a very good job with Burnley in kind of building that team up to the point where it is now, where it's able to consistently come up and come down. I think he'd be okay. I don't know whether he'd be willing to take a step down a league to Leicester in the Championship. We wouldn't have to pay a compensation fee for him either, so that one actually could be a possibility. I guess it just depends on whether Sean Dyche is willing to do it. It would certainly help with our defensive problems. At the start of the season, I would have told you our defence is our biggest problem, but we're currently 9 games at home without scoring a goal. But he'd certainly help with the defence. He would have been a good mid-season appointment, but instead we went for Van Nistelrooy. So thank you for that, John Rudkin. So that's our lineup of possible managers. Personally, I think it's an okay lineup, other than Russell Martin. I'd be quite interested to see what any of them do. I think the club just needs a kind of new face as a whole, and I think Dyche, Danny Roll, as well as Lee Carsley, they'd all do a relatively decent job. My personal pick would be Dyche. He's already experienced. It's not like Danny Roll where he's quite young. He wouldn't particularly know what to do if we do go back up, whereas Dyche would be more of a long-term appointment, I think. But yeah, we're probably going to go with what's cheapest, unfortunately. That's if this man sticks around. John Rudkin, who is definitely the centre of all these problems and has been for multiple years. I told you at the beginning, every level needs to be changed in some way, and the ownership and senior management is no different. Financial issues, stupid decisions, and just a lack of communication with the fans, that's all on Iowat, John Rudkin and Whelan as well. I've seen multiple people suggesting that King Power should just sell the club and we need a completely new set of owners. I see where they're coming from. I personally think that's a very... it's a better thought than it would actually be practically. The Championship is kind of just a big competition to see which club can have the worst owners. The EFL as a whole is just a haven for greedy, terrible billionaires just destroying clubs. I mean, if you look at Reading, that was a Premier League side not too long ago, and now I think they're facing dissolution because they allowed a man who'd already dissolved 2 clubs beforehand to buy them. You've got to think about, they can sell the club, but who would they sell it to? Would the new owners actually be better? And also, who is a competent owner that would want to buy a club in a situation that it's in right now, which is a massive mess? Who's willing to come in to fix that? I'd say the only owners that I'm happy to switch to is some kind of Saudi Arabian owner who will just pump us full of money. Personally, that's the only one that I'd be willing to actually allow the club sell to. King Power will contribute to the Leicester area as a whole, and I get that they're mismanaging the club massively, but they can fix these easily with just a couple changes. It's not like the whole ownership of the club and the foundations of it need to change. They just need to sack a few people and start making some right decisions. And this man here, Iowat, let's face it, is a massive pussy. He just won't fire people no matter what they get wrong. These 3 people on screen, John Rudkin, Susan Whelan and Kevin Davies, who's our finance director, all need to be sacked, and I have no clue how they're still in their job. I don't know what dirt any of them have on Iowa, but I don't know how they're not fired yet after the consistent mistakes that they're making. If Iowa actually gets off his arse and starts taking action and sacking people who are making these mistakes and starts bringing in semi-competent people, I think we'd be doing okay and we wouldn't have gotten in this situation in the first place. There have been red flags for years, then we got relegated, there was an inquest made which nothing came from, they didn't do anything, and look what's happened again. There's been no progress made. If anything, we've actually somehow gone backwards. Sack these 3, or even just one of them, and we will get better, I assure you that. But he needs to do something about that, and I'm hoping a second relegation might wake him up to that. I'm praying that it does. So I personally am King Power in, just make a load of changes. But I can understand why people are King Power out. I can see it going. I can't see them selling, if we're being honest. Unfortunately, I also can't see them sacking anyone, because they just haven't done that in years. They're probably just going to stick with it and just do the same things over and over again, unless they can prove us wrong. I know the media is starting to pick up on how mismanaged we are now, so I'm hoping that puts more pressure on them to actually start doing their jobs. But I really don't know, unfortunately. I mean, we sacked Ranieri the season after he won us the Premier League because we had some bad results. We had a load of bad results, and we still sacked him even after everything that he did for us. How some of these people are still in their jobs after just years of consistent cock-ups, I have no clue. Absolutely no clue whatsoever. So that's just a brief overview of the kind of changes Leicester need to make, how they should start a rebuild. It's not that in depth, but we really don't know much at the moment. The season's not even over yet. We don't know who's going to be coming in next. We don't know what kind of style of play we're going for. It's very possible that we actually don't get promoted right back up next season, and I wouldn't mind that. I much preferred Championship football to Premier League football. It's actually been quite a traumatising season. I'm going to try and keep coming out with updates and more videos on this, just trying to tell people information and news about the club over the next couple of weeks. There's probably going to be, or hopefully there's going to be a lot of changes made. Subscribe if you want to see more of those. I get this is a very poorly made video, but it's one of my first. So just stick with me and I can guarantee you they're probably going to get better. So yeah, comment what you think should be changed to Leicester. Is there anything you agree with me? Anything you disagree with me? Probably. I can imagine quite a few people who watch this are going to be King Power out, which again I completely understand. But yeah, thank you for watching.